My name is Erin Cafaro. I am currently a clinical psychology doctoral student. I'm studying over at UCLA Semel Institute, and in the last phase of my career, I'm working with older adults in their transitional phase, and then also I'm still dabbling and working with athletes as well, mostly folks with post-concussion symptoms. I was a two-time Olympic gold medalist in rowing with eight amazing, strong, badass women. Went to the 2008 and 2012 games. And then, I actually came into rowing a little bit late in the game. I started in college. And I benefited from all of the wonderful women who fought for rights in Title IX and benefited tremendously from their efforts to be able to walk onto NCAA Division I team at Cal Berkeley and, learn how to row from great coaches and great teammates. Everything I did kind of was this consilience that made me a great rower. I was a dancer, like a classical ballet dancer up until I was 12 years old. And then I ran cross country. So I had like the rhythm from ballet, and then I had the endurance from cross country. And then also did was a basketball player. So I had that dynamic like team aspect that, was really a big part, I feel, of being successful on a rowing team because, you can only go so far without your teammates. In 2012, I decided to, hang up my oar, as we say, afterwards because, you know, I was absolutely privileged to be on this team with a bunch of women that won a gold medal twice. Like there's so many people that can't say that they've like been able to take their sport to the, highest level, much less, be able to stand on the podium. And I remember in 2012, um, it feeling not as satisfying. It was almost like I was on this hedonistic treadmill where it was like that wasn't enough. And so that moment actually made me reflect of like, then it's time to give somebody else this opportunity and also kind of dig into what was I chasing, why or what was I running from. My retirement in sport has informed and led me into the second career of mine into psychology because it was a difficult period in my life. And I think one of the most influential things that I learned throughout this process was it's not just about the sport. That having difficulty with this transitional period, you are not just an athlete. You also, alongside, life doesn't stop when you're competing. You also have personal stressors that you're dealing with from childhood up to chronic stressors that, you have to deal with day to day. And yes, there's also a lot of stress while you were competing, right? Like it was a high stress for some athletes, even high risk venture every single day. There's a lot of factors going into this. Not only is your personal stressors or your personal life experiences influencing this transitional period, also being an athlete by nature is influencing this, and this is a really difficult time too. So, transitioning from a career and a team, that may or may not have been really meaningful for you. So I felt absolutely uncomfortable, agitated, and withdrew. I like I it it And, like there's a lot of different variables going on in my life at that time. Um, And so it's hard to kind of, again, I have like this wisdom of retrospect, but it's hard to say that that was because of me um, stopping my professional career. I think you're right. It was definitely something that this team was the most predictable and the most meaningful, relationships that I had really had in my life. And so taking that away was really hard. Um, and I think my nervous system was just really rocked. Yes, of course, after you put in a lot of output, you're going to have a depressive period, right? Like your system is going to need to recover, and it's going to feel not only physiologically like you're tired, but your mind's way of like feeling depressed is to like feel shitty. Like you're going to feel shitty in order because you just potentiated. So you're going to have to go down in order to level out and calibrate again. And that is absolutely what happened with me. It took me about, I would say, I think it was longer than it had to be. It took me about a year and a half to 2 years to really feel somewhat normalized, like I could contribute again to community. And it also didn't help with like I was still working out like I was a professional athlete. And so still not allowing my body to like, recover and recalibrate. So yeah, a long way of saying it was a really very uncomfortable time physically, mentally, socially, everything. This term called sympathetic saturation, right? Like your sympathetic nervous system is where it's that fight, flight, like being ready at the starting line. It's a very helpful human stress response, especially when it's time to go, when it's time to get out of danger. And so if you, again, like I feel like that saturation, if you continue to put yourself in those situations where it's like, okay, go time, like every chronically, then your nervous system's become saturated with like not allowing yourself enough time to recover. And as professional athletes, we know like everybody works out hard. It's like really like the juice is where like, how are you recovering? And I think we allow ourselves, our bodies, like we really do, like at least I did, like so much to like make my body recover. Like I went to PT, acupuncture. I was just like treating my body like a temple, but I did not really pay much attention onto how I was psychologically recovering. Like I was constantly visualizing, replaying, like how can I, what can I do next to, make myself better, and make my team better. And so I never really gave myself those like pause points. And so I think my whole system it was so satisfying in the moment, but in the end, like it all kind of caught up with me and just became very saturated. And as we age and as we progress, there's always going to be a pinch point of like when you can no longer process that much stress. If you haven't been doing, your due diligence and processing it live time. And that catches up with you. That caught up with me. And I think that, yeah, that moment of the transition was really where I felt transitioning away from sport I think when I finally had enough downtime and had enough breathing time to actually reset. And resetting is painful. Resetting is hard because it's like you don't know what's going to come next, but it's so absolutely necessary for our body, our brains to like have that recovery period. I think it actually took me longer than 2 years. And this is like one of the questions that in my research I'm asking, like, do you feel like the transition has ended for you? Um, and what is that? Yeah, what does that even feel like when you feel like you've actually kind of moved past the challenge of this transitional period? Um, but I think for me, what helped me is a number of different things. Um, I think mostly this is comes up through and through is like finding a support system that can really fill you up. Um, and so I think that's like was was the number one, but that took me a while. It wasn't, I actually chose to surround myself with people initially after I retired. There's a lot of people that were like, "Oh, cool, shiny gold medals." And we're looking at that rather than looking at me. And I think that was hard. That was hard for somebody to like not yeah, to surround myself with. It was absolutely my choice. But like surround myself with people that were more infatuated again with like who I was versus who other parts of me too. So I think that was a huge piece within, I want to say, yeah, 5 years. 5 years, I finally kind of came to the realization of like, I'm not surrounding myself with the people who really can want to see different parts of me, want to see that I'm not just this, high performing athlete, that I have this, you know, um, unsatiated intellectual curiosity, and I really want to serve and give back to my community, and like these other pieces of me that I've absolutely been able to bring out through this next career as a psychologist. And I think that was very helpful. One famous psychologist, Carl Jung, is like, what you resist persists. And if you can try to outrun, out strengthen, out, do your demons and emotions, but they will find you. They will persist, and they will come up and usually unhelpful ways. And until you're really able to find, for me, it was like finding somebody that I felt comfortable enough um, to really kind of process through these emotions that I didn't get to earlier on in my life. But it wasn't really until I sat with a therapist to start to accept what had happened to me, and not kind of like gloss over things with what we call toxic positivity of like, or just as athletes, as we're endlessly hopeful. We have to be like, if I just put in more effort, then it'll be better. um and it took me a while to just, and it's still a work in progress, but to like sit with my emotions. I think after sport, I really wanted to focus on my partner. And because again, like I felt like being an athlete, I had this narrative that I was being selfish. And then I also knew I wanted a dog and not to live out of a suitcase. So I did all of those things, and it fulfilled me. It absolutely fulfilled me to a point. I um, spent a lot of my energy trying, and I still do, but working to give back to my family and community. And that has been helpful. But I think this is the benefit and the the challenge of being like on a good teammate. I'll call myself a good teammate, is that I lost sight of what I wanted and what felt good to me. One of the most meaningful things I've done since since retiring is being a co-caregiver for my father who had vascular dementia, which actually really informed, not where I'm at right now in my career with psychology, but you know, it made me kind of come to grips with this like existential anxiety of like, we really only have limited amount of time and what really matters in the end. And so, you know, I think I have how it's evolved, how my life has evolved since sport is I'm giving myself the grace to focus on things that, yes, it feels good. Like community care feels really good to me. Caring and being on a good team feels good to me. Um, but also I'm very introverted. Like being alone feels really good. And so I'm like, I think I spend more time alone than I ever have in my life. Um, alone with my dog Turtle. So, but like that's how is part of how this has evolved. Like it's not like my only value is um through others. That I can actually give myself the time and the grace to reset in between. So that's been a little bit of a different different journey for me. I must say, like, again, like, I think because I was such a team-oriented person and really wanted to give back to my community, that was what led me. Like this, my sense of wanting to be part of a team and be of service, like really kind of led me towards what the next step was. Um, I think one of the hardest things about why it's still hard for me to stay in touch with rowing and my sport um, is because there was, to be sure, boathouses are not hospitable places for historically minoritized populations, whether it's be racially, gender diverse folks, and that has been really hard. I've done some, work to actually share and try to make um, rowing more open and accessible to folks. But it's still a very white, male, pale Yale population. And so I feel like that is one of the things that has kind of really shaped my next steps and like how I want to give back. Um, I have to say it really was being a caregiver for my father. This was recently, he was diagnosed with dementia, I would say about 5 years after I retired. And so it was a slow, gradual progression. And it really just helped me again realize what was really important. Um, but also made me remember that like I'm really good with sticking with being super loyal and sticking with like people that I love and care about, and especially through hard times. And I during, I'm good under duress, I guess it is. And I don't think it's something I don't take for granted. I think holding somebody's hand through their end phases of, their life on this earth is probably was one of the most challenging things I've done. And put really into perspective, I thought rowing, you know, 40K a day was really hard. And it was in a different way. But I think the endurance it takes to sit and just I think again it kind of comes back to this like being able to be still and being but with somebody that is changing into different life phases. It takes it just tapped into something that really was meaningful for me and helped me realize that yes, sport was a very meaningful part of my life, and so is family, and so are my relationships. And so I think that um, that's kind of how I would say that is up there and one of the most meaningful experiences I've had. Yeah, I think persistence, and also, as I shared before, like being a good teammate. I am in this field now in psychology where, um, I get the pleasure of like being in the boat with one other person every single day, where it's like, we get to work together on like what's getting in the way or where their stuck point is. And so I absolutely don't take that for granted that being on a team and being with other good teammates, like who taught me how to be a good teammate is something that I bring to work every day now too. And it takes a lot of patience and repetition, right? And I think that's something that I think we as athletes should not hold for granted. We have again, for better for worse, we have a high stress tolerance. Um, and when it's meaningful, like it really is such an asset when you get to put it towards something that fills you up. For those considering retirement, I would say give yourself, yes, reach out to your community, like the people that you trust. Um, but also give yourself some time to sit with yourself. And it can be so absolutely uncomfortable. Like, sometimes it helps to write. So you're not just sitting still, right? But give yourself again that kind of like breath, that pause point to really kind of reflect and on what what matters to you, not necessarily what you want to do next. That can come later, but like what matters to you right now. Um, and I think giving yourself some of that time and space versus getting caught up in this like what's next. Like um, I also would say like for those that have decided to retire, um, similar advice, like give yourself that time to calibrate, like recalibrate. And one of the best things that I don't think I've mentioned yet that I did was like just spending time out in nature and like kind of recalibrating your sense of awe. Like we get a lot of really good juicy chemicals like this dopamine for like, finishing a practice or if you get to win, like you get a lot of hits. And so our idea of what feels good can be a little bit skewed. So like kind of reset that, right? Reset that so you can feel like the small little pieces of satisfaction from like, I don't know, like going outside and sitting in the sun, or feeling the sand on your toes. Like, and it sounds ridiculous, but it's so important to again like tie into that nervous system piece of letting your nervous system reset so that you can have, clear heart, mind, and soul to go into what's next. I would use my platform more to again help. historically minoritized populations into rowing. Um, Again, it's not for everybody. Rowing, I know a lot of people avoid rowing at the gym. You know, it's an odd sport. It's definitely not comfortable, but I also think it has so many magical pieces about it that helps you kind of again feel like you can be in a team that and being able to get into a rhythm with other people. And so, and from what I understand, you know, I have the privileges of being, you know, white, hetero, female, cisgender. And from what I understand from folks that I have been working with, like there's very few places where they can feel at home or feel accepted or feel like they can get into a rhythm and just kind of comfortable in themselves. And I think being able to get in a boat with somebody, even if you aren't feeling good, you know, you can fall into their rhythm, you know, and you don't have to kind of talk about who you are or what you are. It's like it is the most accepting place once you get in the boat. But I think I really regret not realizing that there's such a barrier for folks to get in the boat initially. I mean, not only, yeah, it's not only socially inaccessible, but financially, right? And so I think, you know, I've done a little bit of work and I will be doing more as I kind of get more stabilized in my career to help make that happen. But I really think we need to open up our boathouse doors to give people the opportunity to get in the boat. Words of encouragement I would give a newly retired athlete is you are exactly where you should be, where you need to be. Um, I think again, it feels so uncomfortable in the moment, but and we do so much to kind of like push through discomfort. But I think just knowing that this is absolutely normal. Not everybody, I imagine, but a lot of other people have this discomfort. And, and so you're exactly where you need to be right now. And also, you know, if it feels too uncomfortable, reach out to Athlete Soul, reach out to a therapist, a pastor, you know, a previous coach. Like you don't have to be in the discomfort alone, but just know that like it's okay. You can feel uncomfortable, psychologically uncomfortable. I'm sure you've felt very physically uncomfortable for a long time, and are good at that. But it's okay to like, um, yeah, it's okay to not feel okay right now. That's kind of my release is like making, not only eating it, but like being able to like have hands-on making food too, and sharing food. Um, I think, yeah, in my career right now, there's very little like tactile pieces, and I really miss that part. Like, I got to like play every day and like be really hands-on. So food is my hobby still, I suppose. But yeah, it's definitely fills me up in different ways. Well, I mean, I think it's something that kind of ties into like a lot of people who met me would never expect this, but yeah, my early life was I was classically trained ballet dancer. So I can whip out a fouette turn. I don't know if it would just be one, but the athlete that I would want to hang out with would be my teammates. From before. I don't get to see them nearly enough, get to talk to them nearly enough anymore. Um, so yeah, those would be the ones that I would want to hang out with.